Please like and comment below and subscribe and share for more first-person encounters.
Case number A008-1. Alien encounter in Connecticut. I had an incident this past weekend that has me wondering what is fact or fiction. This past Monday night I was driving home from work around 9:45 p.m. I live in a very rural area south of Falls Village, CT. And I was only 2 miles from my residence. The roads were still slick from the heavy snow we had received, so I was driving very deliberately. All at once, a deer jumped from behind a snow bank and bolted in front of my car. I slammed on the brakes, but still skidded into the back of the deer. I didn't see where the deer went, but I was now stuck in the snow bank. I got out of the car and noticed that my driver's side headlight was smashed as well. I tried to push the car out the snow bank, but it was not budging. So I had no choice other than to call for a tow truck. About 15 minutes after I called for help, one of my neighbors was on his way home and stopped to ask if he could help. I told him I had called for a tow truck, but I didn't know how long it'd be before it showed up. He said that he would go home, grab some chains and return with his 4-wheel drive pickup in order to pull me out. I thanked him and he left. Not long after my neighbor left, I noticed lights coming toward me on the road. The lights were large and very bright, so I figured that it was the tow truck. As the lights slowly proceeded towards me, several more lights illuminated above and below the others. The vehicle, or whatever it was, stopped about 50 yards from me and remained there for several minutes. Then all of a sudden I witnessed a brightly lit being floating through the woods across from me. It reminded me of those bright white aliens from the Cocoon movie, though I didn't see any facial features. This being quickly floated through the trees, then out onto the road. It started to come towards me, but I was petrified. I just could not move. It didn't have arms or legs, but there was definitely a head and something on the end that resembled a fishtail. It stopped directly in front of me and hovered no more than 10 feet away. There were no eyes or mouth, but I did feel warmth coming from it. It was very calming and comforting. Then it suddenly whisked towards the lights. After a few minutes the bright light started to fade until it was completely gone. My neighbor soon returned, as well as the tow truck operator. I asked them both if they had noticed any vehicle with intense bright lights, but they both looked at me like I was crazy. After they pulled me from the snow bank, I drove home, quickly took a bath and headed for bed. I was still feeling a calming sensation and desperately wanted to go to sleep. I was off work on Tuesday, so I decided to go and have my headlight fixed. As I approached the area where I had been stuck the night before, I noticed that the area where the lights were was completely barren of snow and the roadway was dry. Did I have an alien close encounter? To be honest with you, I don't believe in UFOs, aliens or any of that weird stuff. But I am having second thought as to what I witnessed. Was it simply a spirit of some kind? I have had dealings with ghosts and spirits since I was young. Beth.
Case number A008-2. UFO and alien encounter Fairview, PA. On October 16, 2012 at around 11:15 p.m., I was driving home from work northbound on RT20 West Ridge Road near Fairview, PA, when I noticed bright green lights descending into the woods behind a veterinary hospital. I immediately slowed and pulled into the lot behind the hospital. I could see several green lights in the woods and a few red and white lights. I got out of the car to get a better view. As I stood in front of my car, I started to hear a distinct chopping sound coming from the woods, as well as cracking noises. It actually sounded like several people were cutting down trees. The lights and the activity were about 50 yards in front of me, but I couldn't see any movement. I stood there for about 10 minutes as the sounds continued. I was tired, so I decided to leave for home. I figured that there were workers clearing land, though this was near a residential location, and working at night was a bit unusual. As I made my way back into the car, I noticed movement in an adjacent parking lot. The lot was lit enough to where I could see two figures moving away from me towards the woods. They looked like characters from a cartoon. The figures were about 5 foot tall and very thin. I couldn't see their faces, but the heads had a peanut shape. They moved swiftly, but only their legs were moving. Every other parts of their bodies was rigid. There was also a white sash tied across the waist on both figures. As I watched the figures go into the woods, a whirling sound starting to come from the woods. Suddenly 5 huge green lights ascended from the woods, hovered for a second or two, then vanished. I think that the lights stretched out for about 150 feet. It was a very large craft. The next day I walked through the woods where this incident occurred and noticed a few small trees in a particular area were cracked near the ground. There was nothing else out of the ordinary. I decided not to mention what I witnessed and see if anyone had reported it to the local media. As of today, I have not seen any mention of this landing or the lights. I live in Fairview, PA, and have not heard any mention from any resident. I rather not have my particulars disclosed, at least until another similar report is made public. This is a small town and everybody is in everyone else's business, if you know what I mean. Would you be kind enough to let me know of any reports in my area? Thank you.
Case number A008-3. The thing on my bed. I remember the date because at first I thought it was an April Fool's. I was on the second floor of my house and was getting ready to go to bed. I had just moved towards my curtains, which had been open until this point. I saw an odd light outside. I originally thought it had been because I had my bedroom light on, but I turned the light off and it was still there. My room looked out onto a building site of a nursing home. The light was slightly covered by the corner of the building site, which is when the light came round the corner. At first I thought it was a pixie or mythical character because I didn't recognize it. It looked rather small from the tall window I was looking through. The thing was looking around as if it had lost something, and I thought I was dreaming, so I knocked on the window, ever so quietly, yet it looked up at me. We stood looking at each other for many moments, with these huge eyes. I then stepped back from the window, to see if I walked back if it was still there. I must have stepped back from the window for about a minute, to refresh my mindset. When I looked back outside, it wasn't there anymore. So relieved, I shut my curtains and turned back to my room, and it was on my bed. My bed was positioned in the middle of the room, and my door was shut. I didn't see how it had got into my room, but it was standing on my bed. It didn't meet my hips in height, but had a very large head and skinny body. It was whilst I was staring at it, that it pointed at me and then back to herself. That was when it came over to me, but it was walking weirdly as if it had injured itself. I was sitting down at this point as I was feeling faint. I don't know whether it was the aliens doing or the fact I was seeing something that shouldn't have been real. It touched me over my heart. It was so cold I couldn't physically feel the being, but I could feel the energy, the coldness, and then it walked up the wall and through the open window, which had been closed before. I ran to the window to see two beings walking in the opposite direction than I saw it before, walk through the short hedge and disappear just before crossing the road. Completely disappear into thin area.
Case A008-4. It's okay, you're safe. Hello there, I was listening to a story you published about the thing on my bed, and I had a similar encounter around May or June a few years ago. I haven't told very many people because I don't want to seem crazy, and the recollection of it frightens me to this day. I live in Oswego, New York, which is a somewhat quiet college town on Lake Ontario. I remember it like it was yesterday, and my heart sinks just thinking about it. I was at my friend's house by the river looking off towards the east, enjoying a cigar by a small bonfire we had started in his backyard. It was a really clear, warm night, and being out in the country a bit, there was not much light pollution, so you could really see the stars. Around 9ish I noticed what appeared to be a fireball with a tail in the sky. However, this was no ordinary fireball, comet or meteor. This fireball seemed alive. It was bright green in color and was moving in an erratic pattern. It did a few loops and hopped, heading from north. We have a nuclear plant on the lake, and that seemed to be where it was coming from, to south, before disappearing in the tree line across the river. The sighting only lasted about 10 seconds. I sat there in awe for about 5 minutes. Sadly, my friend was inside and had missed it, but he saw the look on my face, and when I told him what I saw, he believed it. I thought that would be the end of it, however little did I know I would get a much closer encounter. Fast forward about 2 weeks, once again it was nighttime. I was at my parents' house about 1.5 miles away from my friend's house where I had the sighting. It was once again nighttime, I was in bed, and it had to be about 4 or 5 in the morning. I saw a green flash of light through my closed eyelids, almost like someone had taken a bright flashlight and put a green filter on it, and was shining it directly into my eyelids. I tried to open my eyes, but it felt like they were glued shut. I also felt pressure on all of my limbs, as if I was being held down by some sort of force. After a few seconds of panic, my eyes finally opened to my dimly moonlit room, and I wished they hadn't. I was on my twin-sized mattress, which was on my bedroom floor. My bedroom is about 10x12, and these beings were there. I thought I was dreaming, so I blinked a few times and was able to tilt my head a little to the left and right. The beings were still there. These beings were gray in appearance and were short little things, probably knee-high at most. They did not appear to be wearing clothes, they were just light gray, and had very smooth skin. They had large black eyes, thin limbs, were bald, and had oversized heads with small potbellies. All of them seemed to be hunched over in appearance and were all identical. Their faces showed no menace, they were more or less vacantly staring at me, while occasionally looking at one another, seemingly non-verbally communicating back and forth. There was one on each of my limbs, one holding my head, one standing by my door seemingly as a lookout, one standing bedside to my right, and one in front of the closet off to the right, for a total of 8. I tried to move, to struggle, anything, but it was as if their hands had a numbing effect to my body. My brain said fight, struggle, do something. However, despite my best effort, I could do nothing but lay there at their mercy. It seems as if by holding me they were able to block my brain's signals to move. I was finally able to whisper, "Please stop, go away, leave me alone." The one standing off to my right seemed to sense my fear or understand me, because he reached over and stroked my face, and spoke in a sort of whispering, raspy elderly man's voice, saying, "It's okay, you're safe." After saying this, one by one the gray beings hopped off me and scampered over to where the one being was standing by my closet, and each seemed to teleport in a quiet quick flash, no light, while the one who spoke to me kept his hand on me, stroking my head as if to reassure my safety, but keep me paralyzed still. The one standing by the door, who I assumed to be the lookout, then went to the spot by my closet, and it too vanished along with the one standing next to my closet. The one standing bedside said one last time, "Rest, you safe," then patted me, sort of trotted over to my closet like the rest, looked back at me, nodded, then vanished. I sort of passed out, then woke back up in a rush with full function of my body in a cold sweat. I flew over to my light switch and turned on the lights, and just sat there horrified at what had happened. I just sat there shaking my head. It had to be a dream, I thought. I looked down at my arms and legs and was horrified. I could see faint red marks where the beings had been holding me. My room had this weird smell about it, and there was a small, seemingly bleached yellowish spot about the size of an M&M on my blue carpet, where I saw the beings teleport from by my closet area. That spot had not been there before. To this day I still get a nervous feeling when I go to sleep, and usually cover that area up with a blanket or something in hopes that these visitors don't come back. A part of me also sort of wishes they would come back in a less intrusive way, so I could find out what they did to me and why. Tony.
This is Lon Strickler. If you like this program, it would help us if you would give it a thumbs up. Then subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when we upload new first-person encounters. We have many more to come very soon. And by the way, if you have a suggestion or an experience of your own, please leave a comment.